It's podcast day, friends. It's podcast day. I am Mars. Welcome. Welcome into the heyBrownBerry podcast. Take two. Yeah, there's just a lot of fussing and fiddling going on here. Welcome to the heyBrownBerry podcast. This recording was not likely to happen today. I have been away from YouTube for a few weeks now. Thank you to those of you who've watched my recent episodes and vlogs. And the reason this one nearly wasn't is just because I feel like I'm rusty, I'm out of practice. Podcasting is a practice. Even though I'd like to keep it light and make it seem like something I just plop down here and do, the reality is it takes a good bit of gearing up and shoring up to get an episode out. So if you clicked on the button to start this video, I'm already grateful. I'm sitting here because of you in particular, because this is my space to share. I already had a couple chats this morning with friends who also podcast and told them that I'm feeling rusty, which they understand, because many of us would love to have a regular schedule in which we talk to you. But it doesn't always work out that way. And in this case, I found my struggle was that I had so many things I wanted to tell you that I couldn't hit the start button. So today's episode will be whatever I can think to share with you that's happened in the last few weeks. I think that will be enough. We're going to decide that it is. Being busy is usually one of the things that makes me put off recording because I don't like to do it too rushed. If you've watched previously, you know that I do like to give myself a time limit for setup and recording and takedown. But I don't like to feel that I'm just zooming by here and throwing something out onto the internet. This is a record of our connection after all, and it deserves some careful planning and consideration. But on the other hand, when travel is involved or deadlines for other things start to accumulate, then sitting down in front of the camera for a time becomes a bit more challenging. I love to watch Lindsay on the A Wooden Nest podcast, and she said something that really sat with me this week. She mentioned that she thought it was a good time to sit down and record because she wanted to flex her podcast muscle. I think that's the phrase she used. And I thought, oh, that's exactly right. It's like working out and eating well. Consistency is key, but if you're like me, it's the thing that seems the hardest. So instead of letting that be the reason I don't share with you, I'm going to use my word of the year, reframe, and I'm going to reframe how I was feeling about getting in front of the camera. I trust this connection that we have because it's one that you have constantly reminded me that I should nurture. So here's what I've been up to. Will you come on in and share with me? I appreciate it. I mentioned travel. I was very, very fortunate that the first part of my fall has been quite busy. Things that a year ago I had no idea I'd be getting into. For example, Rhinebeck. Hopefully by now you've seen some amazing recaps of the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, which took place in October. I was very lucky to meet Malia Joseph of Stephen and Penelope several months ago. And even more lucky that she's a very persistent person who invited me to join her in their rental house in Rhinebeck Village. And even though I said no a few times because it wasn't in my plans originally, she persisted, and I will be forever so grateful for that. My Rhinebeck experience as a first-timer, I think, was textbook. It was beautiful and nurturing and a reminder of how many amazing humans are out there. And how easy it is to connect with people around maybe one or two things that are craft related, and then expand that connection into 10 things that are not craft related, but make you feel very close. It was overwhelming in its size, but I have to say I was given some excellent tips on how to deal with that potential overwhelm. Huge thank you to Denise, who is Earth Tones Girl here on YouTube and on Instagram.
We're here together.
It's happening.
Can you
Finally! We made it. Almost completely no tears.
It's not gonna last though. They're there. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Mwah. She literally had a Rhinebeck prep call with me to help me embrace the experience and see all there was to see, but avoid the weight of its size and magnitude. So she talked about taking breaks. She talked about just not trying to do all the things, and really just knowing I was going to meet her there and hug her for the first time in real life could have pretty much gotten me through just about anything. It was helpful to have someone who's been there so many times still put herself back in the place of, you know, someone who's new to it and offer such loving advice. Thank you for that, my friend. She captured some beautiful moments that really think reflected what the festival was. So I highly recommend that you go visit her channel. Just a note about lighting in case it tends to come in and out. It's one of those breezy autumn days here in Florida, and I'm not mad about it. When the breeze comes, we remember why we live here. It does mean that there's some clouds going by and the light might shift and change a bit. So Rhinebeck was beautiful. I stayed in a house with some incredible people, and throughout the episode, although I know some of you might just be listening to me, I will be sharing some pictures and videos as I'm talking, and you can always come back if you want to and look at those. It's easier for me to sometimes just plop things in as I remember during editing. I'm surrounded by things that kind of reminded me of what I wanted to share with you. I mentioned I stayed in a house with some lovely people, Aimee of La Bien-Aimée and Stephen West. Amy's best friend, Stefanie. If you guys are watching, I'm just waving to you and missing you so much already. And Stephen's boyfriend, Greg, who I now lovingly call Gregola. And Nancy Marchant. What an amazing group. I don't have to tell you about the talent of any of those people. You very likely know them already if you've come to a knitting podcast and you've been in the community for any amount of time. You recognize those names. But what I do want to tell you is what it's like to have breakfast with people who have large-scale businesses and big followings, and yet they just enjoy a cup of coffee and a delicious piece of bacon with you, or will geek out on, you know, yarn choices and patterns and other things that we all get excited about. And you've probably heard other people who talk about well-known makers say that one of the most gratifying things is when you remember that they are people who love what you love. And that was my experience. While I was at Rhinebeck, I also got to spend time with Maria. Hi, sweetheart. She was working at the Prato de Lana booth, and Prato de Lana is a family-owned farm and now yarn shop up in Massachusetts. And my friend Amanda and her husband run that yarn shop and run that farm. And Maria was working at their Rhinebeck booth. So proud of them to be a Rhinebeck vendor this year. It means everything to see your friends succeed, but not only that, it means everything to see them coming into the fullness of their own goals. And I feel like being at Rhinebeck was was some of that for Prado de Lana as a business and for Amanda's family. So because Maria was working at the booth, I got a heads up that she was packing my virtual shepherd package through Patreon. I am a virtual shepherd of Prado de Lana Farm, very proudly so. And what that means is each year there are shearings of sheep. For example, I'm a virtual shepherd of the sheep who's called Hazel, and Hazel's babies, who I had the privilege to name one, Aimee. And that shearing is milled into yarn, and as a virtual shepherd, I get that yarn. So here's the Prado de Lana logo. And here is Hazel's yarn. Isn't it delicious? To be a patron of the farm is very satisfying. It's one of those big little things. It's a little thing that I can do for a small amount each month to tell my friend, yes, keep going, you've got this. And here's a little bit of financial support from my end of the world to keep going. But then this happens, and it's like more than I can ask for. To know the sheep, to know the family that feeds these sheep, and then have in my hands something that will connect me even further is very special. You can check out Prado de Lana on Patreon. There are multiple levels of support. So see if one works for you. I highly recommend it. This yarn, by the way, is worsted weight. Each one of these is a 2-ply worsted weight 4-ounce skein, and it's 100% Romney wool. I've worked with this before, and I adore it. This came in a tote bag that I had ordered because I found out that Amanda was collaborating with one of my favorite bag makers, who is Tanya Casey. And this collaboration is one that I absolutely could not pass up. When I saw the bag, I thought, oh, they must have done that just for me. So here is the Sweater Guy tote bag that I pre-ordered and picked up at Rhinebeck. Huge. Beautiful, big bottom, tons of room. Project ready. Well done. I'm so grateful to have been able to pick this up in person too and squeal when Maria handed it to me in the booth. So good. I also received some fiber as part of my Patreon, my patronage. This is additional fiber from Prado de Lana, and it's Romney as well, but this is from a sheep called Apple. So I really felt lucky to have ready to knit and ready to spin representations of a place that I love and hope to visit in person one day. I actually was able to braid up some of that fiber. One of the other 2 ounces, I braided it up while I was at Rhinebeck so that I could begin spinning from this braid. I don't like to keep fiber in this braided format for too long. If any of you spin, you know that when fiber is compressed, it can be a little bit more difficult to draft. So in this format of a braid, the fiber is kind of being squeezed together in a shape. It's great for storage. You know, I can roll this up and kind of put it away and not worry that the fiber's going to get, the fiber's going to get pulled all over the place. However, like I said, I don't like to keep it this way too long. I do like it when I'm actively spinning because I can section off some of the fiber and draft. Look how beautifully that drafts. Romney. And draft it really easily and spin from this. So I braided this up as a way to tell myself, hey, start working on this sooner than later. So I plan to do that. Right now it is sitting in this beautiful bag, and I have started some. I have a little bit on a spindle already. Many thanks to Hazel and Apple and Amanda and her family for the joy that is this. So October was full. Rhinebeck was amazing. And really right at the beginning, end of September, beginning of October, I was moving into a swell, if you will, a season of several activities, things that I had signed on for and had been looking forward to, but things that required preparation and some more travel. Full disclosure, I paused for a second there. Wish my husband a good bike ride. He's headed out because, remember, breeze. Coolness is happening. And in Florida, you make the most of that. So back to my fall so far. Travel to the northern parts of the United States is fantastic for a knitter. It's such a great opportunity to wear woolly things that we've made. And I knit with wool anyway. Fun fact about me, it doesn't matter that I don't live in a cold place or a place that gets very snowy winters. I prefer knitting with wool. One of the places I traveled to was Columbus, Ohio. I went to Columbus to teach at the Vogue Knitting Live destination event. This was my first time teaching for an organization like Vogue Knitting Live, and it was a culmination of many months of preparation, good amount of anxiety, fair bit of trepidation, and really just intentionally challenging myself to go and be out in front of some other makers who signed up for my classes. In Columbus, I was teaching toe-up sock knitting, shocker, as well as hand-spun spinning, drop spindle spinning. Two things that I'm very passionate about. When you're very passionate about something, that doesn't always translate to instruction or being able to communicate how to. So I really felt grateful that I had this opportunity to get in front of people who said, hey, I'd like to learn a bit more about this. And I had some very good encouragement from people who had been teaching for a really long time. I was able to really connect with some folks who, just like me, were doing it for the first time. So between those two ends of the spectrum, I was well supported. Hi, Mars here. I'm interrupting myself because I'd like to have this recorded if ever I watch this video back. I'm also really grateful for the fact that my previous corporate experience, in which I did a lot of technical selling, presentations to large crowds, and really a lot of persuasion of people on a topic, really came in handy in this teaching experience. And I need to remember that. And I want to remind some of you about that. Skills are transferable. All the experience counts. And we're full of multi-layers of talent. And we have to hold on to that. Okay, back to me. The Greater Columbus Convention Center is huge, but it's connected to a very nice Hilton hotel where we stayed. And I had the great fortune of having Natalie of Remembrances Pottery as my roommate. Hello, sweet friend. She is, seriously, if you believe in angels, she is one. She's the kind of person who shows up to your event, signs up for your class, brings you food and snacks and treats, and just gives of herself. Talk amongst yourselves.
A bunch of people that I know are coming that I wouldn't otherwise have a chance to meet. So tomorrow's going to be just lounging with people. I'm sure at some point I'll hit the marketplace. Well, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm fairly emotional these days, so I have to be careful how much I talk about these things to get through this. But thank you, Natalie, for everything that you were to me that weekend, and that you are to me as a friend. We were next door to Maria, who was also teaching, and I love things more when she's involved. Plain and simple. She was teaching eco-printing and natural dyeing classes, and she was also teaching about plants as food and medicine. And both of us have had so many opportunities to talk about this big thing that we're doing and to express our concerns and our excitement and everything else together. And that is really special when someone you care about and who cares about you can also be vulnerable and can also just relate. I hope you have friends like that. I hope you have even family members like that, or making buddies. If they can really relate to some of what you're going through, it just smooths the path. So we were in this great big convention center. The beauty of all fiber related meetups is the people. Always the people. It is about the lighting up of faces when someone sees you will never get old. It is about people sharing what they've made with you and just being happy to be there right along with you. That will never get old. And we experienced that all the days we were there. I was able to teach 3 classes, which was great. And that meant I had an afternoon off on Saturday. So I gave a lecture called The Love Language of Making after my 3rd class. And then I had the afternoon free to walk around the marketplace, see and hug some of my friends in there, including Aimee Beth, Fat Squirrel. Hi! More hugs later. I know it seems like I got a lot of hugs when I first met you, but I'm ready for more. My friend Lindsay of the Fiber Seed was vending, and it was really cool to see her booth set up in person. I mean, independent, small, moderately sized businesses in this community work so hard. And then you get to see it in an event like this. The Fiber Seed booth was incredible. I was honored that my ritual shawl was on display because Lindsay's yarn was the inspiration for that design. And walking around in the marketplace was a time for me to kind of drop my shoulders, spend some time with Natalie and others, and see what everyone else was experiencing that wasn't teaching. That was lovely. I really enjoyed that. I got a couple really cool pins from Ann Tudor, or not pins, sorry, stitch markers from Ann Tudor, and didn't really buy much. I wasn't there for shopping really. It was just the experience. And that afternoon also allowed me a little bit of downtime to kind of reflect and actually do some knitting. Do you knit when you go to these fiber festivals? Is that a thing? Yeah, it was nice to recover a bit, and then I flew home the following morning. I like that Vogue is doing these destination events, smaller scale, different regions of the country. I really think it makes the Vogue Knitting Live experience accessible to more people. I will be teaching at the Vogue Knitting Live New York event, the same classes, this time 4 classes. So toe-up sock knitting, a 1st and 2nd level class, as well as hand-spun drop spindle spinning, a 1st and 2nd level class. And my lecture called The Love Language of Making will be a 1-hour lecture on the main stage. And I'm looking forward to all of it. I think having the experience in Columbus really allowed me to gain confidence and to go forward into this next experience feeling like, yes, I have something to offer my students. And I know that the New York event is on another level in terms of size and scale. But what matters is right here in my little radius, I'm feeling good about what I can give to the community. Back home. I have a calendar that I'm keeping. I shared on an Instagram live about a week ago this to-do list / calendar where I put all of the events, at least the ones that I'm aware of at the moment, and all of the activities that I'd like to accomplish month to month. And I actually wrote in the December portion of the calendar in big red letters, making time, as in putting my hands to some projects. I've had very busy weeks and I've had little spots here and there of doing things, but I'm trying to carve out some actual time to sit down and make. Do you all plan that? Are you planners for your making time, or do you just sort of snatch moments when you can? I'm interested. So, comment down below what your method is. Having that bright red reminder for December kind of every day plays in my mind. Like, start winding down, Mars. Get yourself in a position to go back to the joy of creating things. But gratefully, in the meantime, I have been doing some spinning and some natural dyeing. I'll share a little bit of that with you. One of the folks I met for the first time in person at Rhinebeck was Rachel of On the Round. She is a dyer based in Maine, a very successful business built on hard work. I mean, you can just tell. Such a joy to meet in person and to hug and to chat with as though we'd always known each other, because that's kind of how it feels. It's not a cliche. There are a couple of seconds when you meet certain people for the first time where it's almost jarring, like, wait, right, this is the first time we are touching each other and in the same space, even though it doesn't really feel like that. You almost have to remind yourself. It was like that with Rachel. We know each other through Instagram, and I've patronized her business, and she's just an inspiration on a lot of levels. And at some point I had talked about wanting to continue my natural dyeing adventure and not wanting to consume willy-nilly. I don't want to be a person who just collects and collects and collects all the time. I'd like to be very intentional in my buying. And so because of that, I had not done a mass order of undyed yarn from anywhere in a long time. And she picked up on that. And after we met, she went home and said she went into a closet and found several hundred grams of this beautiful yarn. And here's what I did with it. This is a range of colors from the 18 skeins of yarn she sent me. It's representative of the different dye materials I use. Kutch and logwood chips that I got from Malia out in Vancouver, Canada. This is logwood as well. Some modifiers like iron to get these grayer, more muted tones. And then some lichen dyeing, changing up the dye bath with different pH modifiers like soda ash and vinegar, and changing up the soaking time really netted some beautiful results. So across the 18 skeins of this yarn, there are just some stunning colors. If you follow me on Instagram at heyBrownBerry, you'll see a photo on my feed of all of the colors together. And I was taking suggestions over there for projects to make, and people were coming up with some great ideas. A lap blanket, a schlanket. Someone even said, a shawl that's the size of a blanket, like a blanket you can wear outside, in kind of a gradient of the colors would be nice. I thought that was an awesome idea. Just something that keeps them together, because the colors, when you natural dye, you will find that they all just seem to go together, which makes sense because things in nature look like they belong together. The yarn itself is a blend I had not experienced before. It's from the Made in America Yarn Company. Here's another skein. It's a combination of wool, cotton, linen, and soy. And in the dyeing process, it was a hot dye bath. There was definitely some shrinkage. The skeins look very short, and some blooming of the yarn. But the linen and I want to say the cotton that don't really take the dye in a saturated way just made a heathered, beautiful heathered look, which I really enjoy. And it was so much fun to try something new. It was so great to use dye materials that I'd used before, but on a yarn base that was new to me. Fun! In other natural dyeing adventures, I actually have found kind of a double bonus in finding people who are destashing undyed yarn or, light bases in natural wool, well, animal and plant fibers, but I do have a soft spot in my heart for wool bases, wool or animal fiber bases. So I've gone on a couple of destash pages and found people who were destashing berry yarns, not commercially dyed. And I did find some good sources and dyed up some wool silk combinations. This is a lace weight that I've dyed with logwood. Logwood gives ranges of purples, gray purple. And this is a Knit Picks yarn, Knit Picks Bear, which is a very a low price point in comparison for undyed yarn, and always takes color quite well in my experience. So this was a 70 merino 30 silk, and because it's lace weight, I'm considering combining it with some mohair. I'm going to try mohair for the first time. Rabbit hole? Question mark? Possibly. I haven't done it in any great capacity before. I've used mohair blended yarns, but I've not carried a strand of mohair along with another yarn. And because this is lace weight, I'm not a lace weight yarn knitter. I would like to bulk it up a bit. And on some additional yarns I got on destash, I combined the logwood chips and some kutch, and these very, very faint purples and almost pinkish were the exhaust bath. When you're dyeing, the exhaust bath is what's left after a lot of the color has been taken up by your fabric or your fiber. You will have some faint color left in the water, and often that can still be used to dye. I love using it all up. So it makes, a much more muted shade than the original. Natural dyeing has been and still is one of my favorite distractions. It's such a multi-step process, and if you want to do it well in the sense that you don't waste materials and you achieve a color at least close to your aim or to what that plant material is capable of, you have to be patient. There's no way around it. There are several steps, including a lot of waiting, a lot of soak time, even drying the skeins before rinsing them makes a difference in how much color the fiber or fabric will retain. So because that doesn't come naturally to me, I'm kind of like let's get to the end result sort of person. I use that as a way to slow myself down, because when I do, it's so worth it. And when I don't, I get this immediate reminder of maybe a color that's not as saturated as it could be, or a fiber that's felted because I rushed it, or any of these things that remind you, if you take your time, if you really sink into the process, you'll get a better outcome. Reminders for life out of the dye pots. In other yarny news, I did purchase one other thing. I'm just looking at stuff around me. Oh, quickly, I did dye some fabric. I have a lot of tote bags. Do you guys have a lot of tote bags? I have a lot of tote bags. So I'm starting to revisit them. I want to use them more often, put them back in rotation, and I'm starting to dye some of them. Most of them are kind of a standard cotton. Some of them are canvas. This one I dyed with kutch and wild coffee beans. So the kutch I purchased, but the wild coffee beans were from my yard, and hopefully you can see some of the gradation of color in this one. I just stuck it in a dye bath. It was a light cream color before, and now it's kind of a rosy pink. But the point is that I'm just more interested in using it again because it's something that I put my hand to, and I have it out now and it's available to use. So it has encouraged me to dig into other parts of my closet as well. Yes, Yarny News. One of the things that I decided to purchase at Rhinebeck, I didn't intend to do a big haul, but I wanted a sweater quantity of this yarn from Jill Draper. I went to the Jill Draper studio event with my housemates and picked up this. She probably could have named this Marceline, but she didn't, and that's okay. This is Jill Draper's Kingston yarn. It's a DK weight. It's 100% Targhee wool, and in this skein there are 270 yards. I will be honest, I did not go to the studio event with the intent to buy yarn. Since I retired in May from my corporate work, I am much more conscious about spending. I'm much more appreciative of the things that I am able to purchase. When you don't have unlimited funds or you care at all about being conscientious, everything you do buy, especially materials to make, is special. It can be something that you really have to spend some time considering. I bought this yarn because of a conversation I had with Jill, and she wasn't encouraging me to buy her yarn in that conversation. She was talking to me about the city in which she lives and how much she loves it and why she loves it. We were at a studio event, which I'm sure hundreds of people moved through in the course of the several hours that it was open. And yet she took 20 minutes, 25 minutes to just stand and talk to me. And it was very easy. It just didn't feel forced at all. And we were chatting about the reasons why we live where we live and how she finds joy in her particular town. You'd be ready to move there after talking to her. And I just thought that was really something. To me, that just speaks well of a person when they find a way to connect to you that isn't just retail based. Yeah, and then I literally looked up, and in the top right corner of a shelving unit was this. And all of a sudden I heard that it had been calling my name the whole time. And screaming to be made into a sweater. I love how heathered it is. If you're interested, you should check out Jill's website, jilldraper.com. It talks about how she achieves these beautiful, rich shades in the way the fiber is dyed and milled. So I'm considering the Citrine pullover, and that came after considering several sweaters. I love the Rift tee. That's Jacqueline's Cieslak, and it's even been updated to include long sleeves, so that was in consideration. Yeah, I want to try this idea of a well-fitting but somewhat cropped pullover with long sleeves that I can wear over some of my linen dresses. I just want to see that style on my body and see if I like it. I'm really looking forward to casting this on. Before I do that, though, I have some design work to do. This month is my birthday month. I'm born on November 18th. Coasting through my early 40s, kind of loving it. And on that day, for the second year in a row, I intend to release a sock pattern. The R&R socks are currently in the last round of testing. My test knitters are incredible. If any of you are watching, I cannot do this without you. My tech editor, Jessica, hi, sweetie, see you soon. She has been such a great pattern doula. We are going to birth this baby this month. I am also planning to release a second sock pattern before the year is out, and that will be made, or at least my sample of it will be made in this yarn, which is West Wool, a fantastic, fantastic merino tencel blend. Is that right? Hang on, double checking. Good thing I had some nearby. This is West Wool Tandem. I'll show you again the colors I intend to use together. A stripy sock with some very special add-ins is coming in December. Here are some other skeins, some really pretty combinations. And here's the label, so you can see. It's West Wool Tandem, and I misspoke earlier. It is 90% merino and 10% Texel, Texel. Huge fan of this for sock yarn. It's a bit heavier weight than the traditional 4-ply or fingering weight yarn, So I've been knitting it on a larger needle, but the feel is incredible. It is well worth, it's well worth getting some of this. It would be an amazing sweater yarn. That's a given. And for socks, I think it's actually going to hold up really well with that textile for strength and durability. So be on the lookout for another sock pattern coming at the end of this year in this gorgeous wool, which I'm very grateful to be working with. That wraps up the things that I wanted to share with you for sure. I also thought you might enjoy just seeing a little bit of my natural dye process for some things that I have in the dye pots right now. Yeah, while I wait for them to soak and to dry, I also like to take video. I think it helps me to keep tabs on my process and to document. I lovingly call this documentation my dye pot diaries. And it's just my way of remembering the materials I've used and some of the process. So at the end of the video, I will just run some music along with some video that just shows you some of those processes. I had some avocado peels and pits, and I also had some yellow and red onion skins that I collected in the last several weeks. And I'll just show you kind of how I worked with those. Everything is kind of in the last soaking phase right now, so I can't wait for those to come out of the dye bath. Thanks for letting me be here. It means everything to me that I still feel compelled to share with you, and your feedback and your comments and the fact that we share this joy, it makes a difference. So I hope you have a great week. And wherever you are as you're watching this, may you be cozy and may all your making time go as planned. Bye for now, friends. See you next time. Mwah. What a mess.